good to go.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors October 27th regular board meeting. I can't believe it's October 27th already. I hope everyone has their pumpkins. Let's see. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Are we waiting for a flag or no? Oh, there we go. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Thank you. And before we take roll call and get into the bulk of our meeting, I'd like to acknowledge the land that we are on. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast, Salish, Snohomish, and Tulalip peoples. We express our deepest respect and gratitude to the ancestors of this land on whose shoulders we stand. In Everett Public Schools, we strive to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belonging for all students, teachers, staff, and community. And would the secretary please call the roll?
President Mason,
Present.
Vice President Lassane,
Present.
Director Berg,
Present.
Director Mitchell,
Present.
Director Nichols,
Present.
Student Representative Hussein, Student Representative Pilch-Basson.
Present.
Thank you. Our first item of business, as always, is the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Salzman, may you please introduce tonight's agenda?
Thank you, Director Mason and fellow directors, and to our public, good evening. Tonight's agenda contains the following: the superintendent's report, a segment for board comments, segment for public comments, segment for routine business, a segment for information and discussion, a segment for new business, and upcoming agenda items. Since publishing the agenda, the following changes have been made. Item 12.01, COVID fall reopening status, the presentation was added. The board may elect to change order of business by majority of vote of the members. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Move to adopt.
I'll second then.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we will move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. And the agenda is adopted, which takes us to recognitions. And tonight we do not have a recognition. So we will move on to section 7.0, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Salzman, back to you.
Good evening again. To our public this evening, first of all, I'd like to share that it was with a heavy heart, but we had to announce that we'll be going remote learning for the rest of the year till January 11th. And hopefully January 11th, we will come back in a hybrid model. Our numbers are going up in our county, and we care about the safety of staff, children, and our entire community. November 16th, our most vulnerable students that need us the most will be coming back. It's not a large number of students, but it's the best services that we can give the students in our buildings with 100 students that really need us the most. I just want to urge everybody to please be safe, especially as we get into the holiday and the winter season. And as we gather, continue to mask up and continue to do the best that you can during these unforeseen times. Really, that's how I would explain it. Unforeseen times with COVID that we did not expect, but safety will always be first for all of us. And that was the decision that we made. And we just want to continue that transparency with you and why we did it and why we announced it today. Second of all, I had 3 wonderful meetings with our student leaders, and our ASB teacher sponsors. You are amazing. Just hearing the students and the lifeline that you are to them is just so special. There's times I know they're challenging. We'll always honor student voice. I certainly know if I missed it, I apologize, but just to hear our student leaders speak about what they're going through and also what they want to see. I see Tara out there, and Tara and I were on the Jackson ASAB, and I know she might talk about it later, but we have a surprise for the Jackson students soon, don't we, Tara? It's going to be a real surprise for the Jackson students, so stay tuned. But talking to the students, my gosh, they are working so hard in these tough times too, and we tend to forget that when they entered school a year and a half ago or a year ago, they did not expect this. And just to hear from their academic side to their social emotional learning side was quite beneficial for me to hear. And we also started talking some activities that we can do for the students via Zoom. So I learned a lot, and we enjoyed our talks together. Again, not only to the students who you're amazing, but to our teachers and our sponsors. How you're holding this together is just great. And then finally, Halloween is a night where many people might be out and about, and all I could say is to just follow the guidelines that we hear from our health district and from our state, and everybody just be safe, because your care and health are very important to us and certainly important to me. So just blessings to everybody, and thank you for your support to our community.
Thank you. We will go ahead and move on to board comments and student representative comments. And if you have something you'd like to share today, go ahead and just give me a wave. That would be probably the easiest. Director Nichols.
Thank you. Just wanted to take this opportunity as we're approaching November to just encourage, especially our students that are 18, to go out and vote. If you don't know, once you're 16 in the state of Washington, you can register for to vote in preparation of turning 18. Part of our education here in the district is civics and being a good engaged community member, and not just on presidential elections. Local elections are extremely important, if not more important. They all touch your daily lives. So I hope you're all getting out, no matter what you're supporting, who you're supporting. Get out there, make your voice heard, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So have a safe Halloween, and we'll see you all in November after this meeting.
Thank you. Other directors or student representative? Director Berg.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, again, say thank you to all the amazing teachers and families out there that are truly partnering with us in this new normal. I got to go on a wonderful IR today with Jefferson Elementary. Go Rhinos. Why did I not know we had rhinos in the district? I love that mascot. So anyway, side note, it was a fabulous IR, a fabulous team there, making real progress. And I think Dr. Saltzman had mentioned something during that IR that really kind of stuck with me today, which was, how can we engage students more, and how can we really partner to not let students fall off, right? We're always focusing on students, we're always focusing on families. And so I thought about my journey right now as a parent in the district, as well as a school board member, and having to school my kids at home, right? Like it's not easy. And so, but one of the things it's led our family to do is really focus on our house rules, which I think as a leader in the district, I think we should all kind of have rules or a lens that we put things through. And so I just, for the community, wanted to share that with them tonight, just a few of the Berg house rules that hopefully you'll see us as board members kind of embody this. But, in our house, we do second chances, we do grace, we do mistakes, we do real, we do I'm sorry, we do loud really, really well. We do hugs, we do love, and we do family. And so every morning we get to get up and look at that as we're learning together in this new normal. And I just, I just want folks to know we're supporting them. We're putting families first. We're all in it together, no matter who we are. We're all just struggling to get our kiddos the best education they can. But, sometimes we're not perfect. We do mistakes, and just giving us that grace in this moment would be phenomenal. But the biggest thing is, as directors and as a district, we're partnering with parents in this journey. And so we don't want to lose any students. We don't want to lose any families, and we're hoping that they stay and partner with us. So I just wanted to share that, and just thank you to all the teachers and families out there.
Thank you. Other directors, student representative, Director Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you. I want to take off on what Director Nichols said, because I posted on Facebook and Twitter to go to voter.votewa.gov to check the status of our votes, that they were accepted. And my husband was at work yesterday and said, "Oh, Tracy, everybody at my work wants to know how you did that." So if there's any way we can promote that, it is a public site. It's true. It's a washingtonstate.gov. So voter.votewa.gov. You can see if your ballots were received. You can see if they are in process, and you can see if they were accepted. And I'm proud to say our 3 ballots are all accepted, as Becca is voting for her first presidential election. And then something I've seen in the community, which it's a sort of more of a question, is a few of my neighbors have Jackson Senior signs with the student's name on them. And I wonder if this is a standard for all of our high schools, or something that was special for certain students. So that's just a question, if I can get an answer to it at some point, because I think it's outstanding. My next thing is that, side note, Sunday morning grocery shopping at Fred Meyer, just nicely commented to a woman next to me in the produce section about our masks, and isn't it great that we're both wearing masks, and how do you open up those plastic bags when you can't lick your lips, and thank goodness we don't lick our fingers anymore to open up those plastic bags. But she offered that she's a mom here in the district, and I said, do you mind? I'm a school board member. Can I please ask you a couple of questions? And she said, oh, of course. So I know this is just an N of 1. She has a 2nd grader who does not want to go back to school until she can hug her friends, and struggles at the same time with sitting at her desk all day long on her computer. And her mom said, but honey, you have to sit all day long in the classroom. So I also said, Mom, how is this on you? And she said, well, fortunately, I am able to stay at home, so it's not as hard on me. I appreciate the hardness it is on other families. One thing that she did request, and I said, we are trying to do our best, but every parent and family receives information, is really she would prefer the more information about our plans for reopening, the better. She said sometimes they're asked, like our surveys, for information, but and I know a letter is going out sometime soon, but that really more information is better. Again, that's an N of 1, but I wanted to pass on her message. And then I appreciate Dr. Saltzman, your mask up, that there's an article in the paper, University of Washington Health Research is doing a great job, that if 95% of the people mask up, we wash our hands, and we social distance, we can save over 600,000 lives. And that's what's going to reopen our schools, is mitigation plans like masks, social distancing, and hand washing. So thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing, Director Mitchell. Hopefully that parent saw the information that went out today, and they've gotten their latest update. Director Lassane, I noticed your hand earlier.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on 2 IRs that I have had the opportunity of sitting in, Silver Lake and Eisenhower. And what I would like to do is thank the teachers that offered up their rooms for the team to go into. It was great to see students engaged. It's a lot of work that they're doing, and they're truly making sure that they are engaged, and they have unique ways of asking for shared experiences to be brought forward from their students. And I'll leave it at that. It's kind of unique how you can do that. It's from kindergarten all the way to middle school students. They're each in their different areas of how they raise their hands, so to speak, and I'll leave it at that. I had an opportunity also to attend a Let's Connect for the Central region, in which we heard some of the voices from our families about opening up, about hybrid, about all kinds of things, and in preparations of getting their students back to school in the new normal, which will be hopefully very soon. And it's truly important to note that there are a lot of parents that are concerned about this. And the more we have those types of meetings, it's the better, I think. I also had the opportunity of sitting in on a special education PTSA meeting in the last 2 weeks. And I must say that it's very important that we keep the lines of communications open and ensure that parents have, in a sense, more information than no information. I mean, don't ever feel that, well, we put that out, that's just too much to put out. It's better to have more information than not. A lot of our special ed students, and I'm very grateful that we'll be going back early for some of them, do not have the same resources at home so that they can continue their learning from home. And it's important that we look to what is necessary for them, because some of their families cannot do what other families can do in order to keep their children engaged. But again, I would like to repeat also for them, more information, the better. There were several parents who were concerned because cases were on the rise, what our intentions were. And I know we've made that notice now on our website and online to parents. But it's very important that we keep all of our parents engaged in what's available, what we hear, and put that out for the community as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And student representative Pilch Bassan.
Hi, so the first thing I want to say is definitely thanking Dr. Saltzman for those videos, or those, I don't know why I said videos, meetings with ASB students. I know that was something that was not only helpful to hear student voices and to make that connection between the superintendent's office and the students, but also it's just kind of a lighthearted, heartwarming meeting in my experience at least. So thank you for that, and I'm excited to see what's going to come out of that. I won't spoil the Spirit Assembly idea that we came up with, but Jackson students can be excited for that in December. The other thing I want to say is, on a positive note, what I've noticed from students' perspectives is two things. Number one being, I can't say that everyone has gotten everything 100% right on the first try with online learning. And it's hard finding the balances between what's an appropriate amount of work for students and how student schedules are going to work. But in my experience, teachers have been very open to feedback about that. And they've been really understanding about students having issues with the amount of work or the format of work or online. So I want to extend my thank you to teachers for being flexible and understanding, especially to students who might not have ideal home conditions. And then the other thing that I want to say is, at least on a high school level, something that's been really valuable for myself and other students who are involved in clubs at the school is the restarting of those clubs and club meetings. It's tiring to be on Zoom all day for school and then hop on Zoom again for, in my experience, like a Model UN meeting after school. But as tiring as that is, it's also really nice to be engaged with other students that I might not have classes with, but also might not see or talk to outside of school, and seeing them in a more informal setting and in a club where we're all interested in the same thing. That's been really uplifting for me. So it sucks that we can't do those clubs and those kind of things in person, but it's been good to get back into the rhythm of things, to feel busy again, and to feel like at least the time on Zoom I'm spending is in something I'm like specifically engaged in, and then just getting to talk and see and joke around with students in a non-classroom setting while still virtual has been good for me. So, and my other students as well. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's great to hear that perspective. What's interesting is listening to the directors speak and student representative is the words that keep coming up, things like flexibility, understanding, and grace. And I think if we continue with more of that, we'll get through this together. I had an opportunity to also participate on one of the Let's Connect meetings and for the North region, and was really impressed with the ideas that the parents shared and the questions that they had. It made me recognize that as much information as we put out, and our communications department, I think, is doing an incredible job, we still miss little details here and there. And it's great to hear from them to bring that to our attention, and then also let them share sort of their experiences at home. And then I had an opportunity to go to the Madison Instructional Review, and I have to say, and then yesterday I was also at North Middle School for a tour of the parts of the school that were most recently completed. So the gym area, the orchestra, the band room, and the new fields, which are amazing. I'm giving Principal Entler hard time because he's got the fields in the district right now. But we'll bring those others up too at some point. But I did have a chance between the IR and being at North yesterday to actually witness teachers in action and also have a chance to talk to them a little bit. And I just walked away with a sense of how hard our teachers are working right now. And, you know, I know that I've heard it many times, but to see it was very different. And it's just incredible, the planning that they're putting in place to think about being in a classroom all day long, and then every single day, and all those lesson plans that they're used to teaching and have in their back pocket now have to be remote and engaging in a way that's just entirely different. I have to say, I'm in complete awe of what our teachers are doing. And that's not to say that other staff and parents aren't working just as hard. It just, this week, that's what really stood out to me. And then I just want to reiterate what Director Nichols said, and hope that everyone has a chance to get out and vote if you have not done that so far. So that's all I have for tonight. So we will go ahead and move forward on the agenda. And our next item of business is public comments. Do we have any public comments to share this evening?
We do not have any public comments.
Okay. Then that takes us to our consent agenda. Dr. Salzman, may you please give an overview of tonight's consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Before I get to the consent agenda, just can I make two quick statements?
Yes.
If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Director Nichols,
I
can I borrow that line? I just want to know.
I borrowed it from somebody else.
All
So,
right, thank you.
know.
I like that. And then I know the future's bright when I had the ASB meeting and it was Tara's birthday that evening. And I said, Tara, what are you going to do for your birthday? And she said, I'm going to watch the debate with my friend. So Tara, I know the future's bright. Thank you for sharing that day on that call and that statement. That meant a lot. All right, consent agenda. I'm still thinking about the menu and the table, so bear with me. Okay. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items such as meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, surplus lists, gifts and grants, and recurring contracts. Sometimes it includes items that occur less frequently but are of routine business nature. These items are usually reviewed by the board in the Friday report, 1 or more weeks before the board meeting. This gives directors time to ask staff questions or consider a discussion about the policy implications of those items. The board votes on the consent agenda in a single motion. By its definition, a consent agenda is not debatable. In the case of the consent agenda, the superintendent's office received one late question regarding vouchers. The consent agenda is presented and published for board approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Would any director like to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in new business section of the agenda? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move to the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. The consent agenda is approved. And before we move on, I just want to say happy birthday, Tara. A few days late. I have a fall birthday too. They're awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, so Now we are on to our strategic progress monitoring. And tonight we do not have an item of monitoring, but we do have a fairly lengthy information discussion item. And this is our October COVID-19 fall reopening status. And I believe that Dr. Scott will kick us off. Is that correct?
It's actually, thank you. It's actually Kathy Reeves that's going to kick it off here for the first
Okay.
slide, and then we've got a whole
Ms. Reeves?
team lineup.
Okay, what do you see?
Not full screen.
Okay.
I'll tell you when you're good.
Now,
Nope.
this happens when you have too many screens, I think.
Yeah, you need to go up to display settings. There you go.
How about that?
That's good. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm with Director Mason. It seems like it should be November, but it's October, but I also feel like we just did one of these. So I think it has been a month and we have a lot of great information to share with you. And we're gonna start by talking about the typical pieces that we have been talking about, and that's remote learning and technology. And then tonight we have some teachers and administrators who are gonna share their experience with what they've been doing for remote learning. We're going to talk a little bit about the hybrid status and where we are at in our announcements and bringing students back to the classroom. We'll do a debrief on the Let's Connect sessions that several of you have already referred to. We'll talk about health and safety operations, and then a brief update about communications at the end.
So good evening, everybody. So happy to be here and in refreshing our data on our template here on reentry. Just a brief review of our attendance rates since the start of school. You can see here elementary ranging at about 97%, 98% in middle school, and 96% in high school. So recall that attendance is measured by participation in at least one of the following. So daily logins to a learning management system. So in our case, that's Canvas, or a daily interaction with the teacher, or evidence of participation in a task or assignment. So that, again, the standard here for attendance is evidence of student participation, either synchronous or asynchronous on the student's time that's to maximize the flexibility and the modalities of how students can demonstrate their engagement, demonstrate their learning over time. And this is an and both. So not only do we want student participation clearly, and that's the reason for the high attendance rates, we also want students to be fully engaged. We want that meaningful exchange of student work, standards aligned instruction. We want those exchanges to happen readily with their instructors. So we're both monitoring student participation and attendance. So the overall level of engagement and responses to staff interventions is something that's being tracked at the student by student level at each school. We were so excited. This was a really big deal. We were excited to support our Learning Improvement Day on Friday, October 16th, so a few Fridays ago. The title of our, we thought it was important to showcase a bit of the professional development and how it was tailored to this environment that we find ourselves in. The title of our conference day was Stronger Together, Strengthening Practices for Equitable Outcomes, and included a powerful welcome and purpose setting by our superintendent, Dr. Saltzman. And he really underscored the importance of equitable outcomes for each student. Our keynote address was by Bill De La Cruz, who many of you have had the chance to meet. And Bill's outcomes were to establish a common understanding of what we mean when we say culturally responsive practices and growing those culturally responsive practices within our sphere of influence, whether we're a classroom teacher, whether we're a paraeducator, whether we're a custodian, whether we are an office manager. Understanding why building a sense of belonging and inclusion is critical to student success and our role in promoting that. And then just growing healthy and sustainable relationships in our organization to improve climate and culture, which are, as you know, are two key pillars of the 4 pillars in our organization. We were excited to have teacher-led 109 courses led by content directors and teachers, engaging over 1,700 teachers and paraeducators. And just again, one of the great things about this Learning Improvement Day, it really reflected the core values and the expertise that exists among our staff to lead sessions on those four anchors there: equity, instructional practices in remote learning, leveraging technology tools like Canvas, like the Google suite of tools, and many, many more. And then our fourth anchor around social emotional learning.
So to follow up on what Dr. Scott shared about our Learning Improvement Day on October 16th, of those 109 courses, we had 23 that were offered in each of those 3 sessions that provided training specific to instructional technology tools. These courses fell primarily into 3 categories. As you can imagine, almost half of them had to do with Canvas as a virtual classroom, a variety of setting up your homepage, engaging elementary learners utilizing Canvas, as well as some of the Canvas tools like Canvas Studio. There was also other courses on feedback and how to engage your students, and different strategies using instructional tools such as Adobe Spark, Padlet, WeVideo, things like that. And really fully engaged. Most of them were teacher-led, teacher-developed. It was very exciting. The entire day really highlighted our district's transition to integrating technology, as the entire PD conference was delivered virtually, utilizing the technology that we have and are so fortunate to have access to. And we're currently moving the videos from these sessions and the supporting documents to a shared space in Canvas, so people, even if they couldn't attend a session because of their limitation on attendance, they still had access to be able to go view these courses asynchronously. So this PD is going to continue to provide support for our teachers. We also utilized our upgraded website to have a web page for our teachers on this day, that for ease of access, sessions and updates that they could have access to. I did want to mention as well, on the PD side, we are establishing our network of support, professional development network across the district of teacher leaders at elementary, middle, and high school, and partnering with us in the learning management system on developing good models and good practice using technology. And we started our deep dive with those teams beginning this past month in October. You can see wanting to continue to update you on parent access utilizing Canvas compared to the first month of school. These are the number of parents who've logged into Canvas as themselves. We do have some parents, especially elementary, that log in as their student. We saw an increase in number of parents signing up for notifications. So if a parent signs up for notifications, they don't necessarily log into Canvas because they're getting notifications sent to them already about what they want information on. So that could be an explanation for the change in number. This past month, we fully implemented Seesaw for our youngest learners in pre-K and 1. This is an instructional tool with developmental appropriate activities for our early learners. It is meant to augment our Canvas learning platform. One of the nice features of Seesaw is the activities a teacher builds in Seesaw links to their Canvas page. Also this past month, Remind is a tool that our teachers have used in the past, but we've never had it available K-12 sort of managed and rostered centrally. So now Remind as a communication tool is available for all of our students and all of our families. It's a great texting feature that where teachers can text families as another communication tool available to them. And lastly, an update on Enrollment Online. This is something we started in March for new student registration. We're now using it for annual updates. Think of it as all of those paper forms you get, like the home language survey, those things that come home. We're utilizing Enrollment Online to be able to get that out to families. It's adaptive. A parent would only get what's applicable to them and their grade level. So we'll continue to build that out in our remote status. And some updates on technology support. The number of computers this past month has stayed pretty steady from the previous month. We have seen an increase in the number of hotspots that we have checked out. And that's primarily due to the number of students that have internet, but it's not very good internet. They might have too many devices. They might live in an apartment complex where it's provided, but it's not very strong. So we're going out, we're partnering with principals and schools to identify those families and get some additional hotspots out to those families. And customer service continues to be a focus for our department. We're seeing a transition in our calls, although the volume has stayed pretty steady, but the calls and the tickets coming in are more advanced now. So now they know how to connect, but now it's how do I navigate, how do I use? You saw some examples of some of the top calls, like for our high school students. How do I use Adobe Creative Cloud? I have access to it, but more information about it. So, but we continue to work through that, and customer service continues to be a focus for us moving forward.
So at this sort of midpoint of our presentation here, we thought it would be important again to highlight the work of our staff. That's the core of the work. This is such a creative, iterative work, responsive to the needs of students in school community. We've invited 3 awesome instructors and 1 high school decorated high school principal, and Amanda Overly. Taylor Magic is a first grade teacher at Lowell Elementary. So welcome, Taylor. Thanks for being here. Lara Fulner-Grennan is from Gateway Middle School. She's a 6th grade English language arts teacher. We have Bree Youngberg, who works at Cascade High School as a CTE teacher and a teacher leader. And of course, Amanda Overly, principal at Everett High School. So I'm going to serve as the moderator and sort of timekeeper here. Each will have about 5 minutes to illustrate one high impact strategy to engage, that they're engaging their students in learning. And with these folks, I'll have to tell you, it was very difficult to narrow it down to just one strategy. So thanks again for being with us. This is always a treat and a highlight. So we're going to start with Taylor.
Hi, thanks for having me. I am going to share my screen so that you can see some screenshots that I have from Zoom. My strategy that I'm going to share is building relationships and, oh, that's not my, building relationships and then creating a classroom culture that makes them feel like they are at home in class, even though physically they're at home on their computers. So the first strategy, or the first image that you see, is something that I do every day in the morning. Our Zoom starts at 8:30, and starting at about 8:20 or 8:25, I let them, whoever's in the waiting room, I let them into Zoom, and I just give them free range to talk to each other, kind of like if they were at lunch around a lunch table. There is not a lot of unstructured time built into our day because we're on Zoom, and that time is really valuable. And so we want to pack as much learning into that time as we can. So I'll have about 8 or 10 kids on a little bit early. And at first, when I started doing it, it was a lot of just like blank stares, and I was asking them questions, and it's kind of like super awkward for everyone. And but now they just totally talk openly to each other, and they're working on those social skills, like when to interject with a question, how to talk without talking over each other. And it's been really interesting to see that growth online, and not, some of them, they haven't even met each other before. So that is one thing I do, and it kind of helps strengthen relationships between them and myself, and between classmates too, because it's a lot of like telling stories. They find stuff around their house that they want to show off, like pets. The next image I have is something that we do a couple times a week. On Zoom, we will play math games together, and I try to play like the same couple games, and we keep score, and it's usually like a teacher versus class type of thing. And so this game that we play is Number I Spy, and I have a number that I have in my head, and they have to ask me yes or no questions to try to figure out what my number is. So these are the questions that they're asking. And this, after we played it a couple times, they get really excited when they get down to just a couple numbers, and they will like ask each other for help. Like in this screenshot I did, I was down to 2 numbers, and we called on one student, and he was raising his hand, but he said, I don't know if I can do this. I think I need some help. And he called on a friend to help him guess what the number is. And so this kind of keeps them coming back, especially if I tell them like, okay, tomorrow we're gonna have a rematch and see, you know, if I can finally get a point, because they beat me every time. So that is really exciting to them. And then the third screenshot I have is something that I'm really used to doing in the classroom. We come up with expectations for things together. And I've continued to do this on Zoom, and they always have great ideas. And this particular one was, we did our first milestone task in math. So kind of like our end of the unit assessment. And so we just talked about, you know, what that was, what it meant, what it might look like on Seesaw, because they've never done something like this online. And in first grade, they haven't done a lot of assessments like this in the first place. And so they just get to share what they think is important to remember when we're doing something like a test. And they always get pretty much everything on my list that I would want to tell them. On here, you can see the first couple, they said we do the work on our own, we try our best, we listen to directions, things like that. So that kind of helps them buy into it. And it also kind of prepares them like emotionally for the fact that they're going to have something like this to do the next day. It just kind of prepares them. And so it's not sprung on them like, okay, we're having a test and you've never done this before and it's kind of a big deal. So it kind of just helps them process that before it happens. And the next thing I have to show you is on my Canvas page. Let me get that. I'm going to stop my screen share and reset it so that you can see the whole screen. I have an art background, and so in my classroom, it's always a big deal to me to have a bunch of artwork around the room, and it kind of helps the kids feel like this is their classroom and not just, you know, my room that they're in. It's really our space that we create together. And that was something that I felt was really lacking online, and it was kind of like weighing down on me. And so I figured out a way sort of to kind of have that feeling of like, this is their online classroom. And so I have a button on my Canvas page for bulletin boards, and they will submit their work on Seesaw, and I will just like take a screenshot of it and upload it. And so we have all of our different bulletin boards for projects that we've done. So this All About Me Tea was our first kind of like get to know you. They put pictures in and fill in like their favorite food and their favorite thing to do at school. These are some self-portraits that we did. We did a still life piece in the style of Diego Rivera. So a lot of this one I had a lot of submissions for, so that one has 2. And then same thing with this, we did a Beautiful Oops project. We read that book, and then they made all kinds of different collages. So this just kind of gives them something to feel like ownership over on our classroom. It's not just something they log into every day, but it's something they can go to and see their work on. So those are a couple ways that I build relationships and help them feel comfortable enough to engage with me and engage with each other while on Zoom.
Thank you, Taylor, for sharing those examples of how you're engaging your students. Really appreciate the differentiation that you've brought into your classroom. We're going to shift to Laura Fulner-Grinnan, at 6th grade ELA teacher at Gateway. So Laura, you want to cue yours up?
Yes. Hi, thanks for having me. let me go ahead and share my presentation. Hopefully you can see that okay. I'm going to share with you this evening how I engage students through formative assessment. I actually have all kinds of ideas about what I think keeps kids engaged, but I wanted to know what they say. So I created a Zoom poll to ask them which 2 strategies keep them most engaged during English class. And the options were clear content and organization, frequent check-ins, feedback on learning, relationships, and cooperative learning. And frequent check-ins was one of the top 2 choices, along with cooperative learning. Of course, that was not a shocker, but I'm decided to share the frequent check-ins or formative assessments tonight. So in English language arts, many of our lessons span more than one day, especially during remote learning. So it's incredibly important that we have frequent formative assessment opportunities. And there are 3 ways that I do that in my daily learning plan. So 1, I have something I call practice points, where I make the most out of soft starts. 2, I try to make every lesson as interactive as possible, even if it means slowing down to check in. And 3, I assign what I call formal formatives at the official end of the lesson, which is a time for students to bring it all together by applying their learning and processing their understanding independently. And that's probably what most people think of when they hear the term formative assessment. So what do practice points look like? We start class by greeting each other and discussing a question or topic designed to get to know one another. For example, would you rather have the ability to teleport or be invisible? All students have the opportunity to share their thinking verbally with the class. Some choose just to share in chat instead, and that's completely fine. But I've started using those questions and prompts to launch a practice point or an opportunity to review something from previous learning. For example, to practice making inferences, I asked students to consider which power they thought the narrator from one of our personal narratives would want to possess, teleportation or invisibility. So here you can see some of their answers in chat. I think the narrator would like to have the power of invisibility because he could literally hide from his problems. Invisibility because he could be able to live life without having to deal with hate and judgment. And then a student who chose the opposite, I think that he would want teleportation because he can go to a store and get a new jacket. But because students were able to engage in that topic already, I think it supported their inferences and showed their best thinking. So that's one way that I formally assess them to keep them engaged. I try to make every lesson as interactive as possible by using a variety of teaching models, and concept attainment is one that I'm a big fan of because it brings students into the teaching, which makes everything we do in the lesson a formative assessment. Like there's no way around it. So for example, when reviewing figurative language as a writing technique, we all worked together on a Padlet. If you've never used Padlet before, what you're seeing here is just a small glimpse. All of those columns scroll down with other posts. But I told students we were going to learn a writing technique, but that they had to discover what it was by looking at examples and non-examples. So I introduced yes examples and no examples. And when students had a guess or hypothesis, then they entered it into the hypotheses column. And then there's a bunch of guesses there. But we stopped to test each example or each hypothesis by comparing it to the yes examples. And we did that until we landed on one that passed the test. And then I introduced the formal definition and students were able to add examples to show their understanding. So because you can't see, I added some here, a student practicing hyperbole. If you do that again, I will destroy you. And another student practicing simile. The internet is like a virtual library. And then another student choosing an image instead to show the idiom, a cat got your tongue. So just being able to engage them throughout the lesson while also using the information they provide me to get a pulse on what they're learning and taking away from the lesson. And then even from there, we were able to bring that lesson back to a text that we read in class. And I shared a quote with students that included hyperbole. And then we did a quick little Zoom poll to check on their ability to analyze figurative language. And what you see here is the spreadsheet that I can get from their results. And in this particular case, it showed a lot of confusion around figurative language to achieve a particular effect. So because I had done that check-in immediately, I was able then to revise another learning activity in this lesson by adding some prompts and examples to the graphic organizer that they were going to use to analyze descriptive language. While the practice points in the interactive lessons guide the direction of the lesson itself, information I gather from formal formatives inform any reteaching that needs to take place. So here it's you'll just see a task I assigned in Canvas that asks students to apply what they learned about descriptive language independently. And then I use rubrics to remind students of the success criteria, and that also guides my feedback. And so what you've just seen is kind of the whole cycle of within one lesson, how I can check in with students and get a glimpse into what they're learning in order to move forward and keep them engaged. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. I think you've illustrated the power of the frequent checks for understanding, and you're doing it in a very diverse way that keeps them interested and engaged, and it's fun too. That's important. Bree, you're next.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the kind words about teachers at the beginning of this. I know this is a difficult situation for all of us, and we as teachers really appreciate all of the feedback and kind words. So the picture on the front, back in the spring when school shut down, I actually wrote a Facebook post comparing the transition of school to building a house. And you take this house that's being built in the middle of a city, you've got all of the resources available right around you, you know the environment, and overnight you pop that house on a cliff by the water in the middle of nowhere. And you know, of course, what happens, you take some time. You take some time to learn your environment. You take some time to find out where the resources are. And in the end, it's one of the most beautiful houses out there. But it doesn't happen overnight, and it takes some time. And that really kind of fed my soul this summer. And I know a lot of teachers were kind of struggling with the same things. And I read books and I took classes. And I did as much as I can to learn this new environment that we're in. And the three big C's that came to mind for me through all of my research was this idea behind clarity, consistency, and compassion. And those three C's have kind of driven everything that I've done for teaching thus far. The first thing with the Canvas page that I have had a lot of positive feedback on from students is I have this one-stop shop model. It's a very simplified modules page, and every week there's a weekly overview. So this is actually only part of it. It continues down for the entire week. So students would go to this overview. At the top, they would have kind of a summary. What are we learning? Then it goes into the success criteria. So by the end of the week, this is what I would like students to know, so they know if they're on track for you know, what we're learning. And then it goes into the weekly checklist. So this is actually this week's, and you can see a sample. Again, you would also see Wednesday and Friday on the Canvas page. And it's very explicit as to what we are going to be doing both in class and out of class. So that way students, they know, okay, this is what we're going to be doing on the Zoom, and this is what we should be doing during the asynchronous time. If it's a day that we take notes, I provide two different opportunities for kids. So they have a blank notes as well as a completed notes. And that allows students, some like to open and digitally ink, some like to print and ink, some like to just listen and then have the notes completed for them so they could go back. Or if students are unable to attend the Zoom, they have the notes as well. So they're not missing out on that. And that's a really important thing given, you know, internet issues or home life situations, that students have access whether they can attend or not. And then of course, there's the asynchronous time that's very explicitly said, this is what you should be doing when we leave this Zoom call. So that's that clarity and consistency piece. Again, with that compassionate side, I know not all students are able to attend. When we take notes, and again, I teach 2 AP economics classes, so there has to be an element of some direct instruction. And what I do is using a webcam during the live Zoom session, I actually record myself taking the notes. and I'll pause it and then start recording again. So some of these are a little longer because we've taken a pause midway through and maybe they've had a chance to do some of the practice problems, and then we continue again. And then immediately following that Zoom session, I post these on Canvas. So within the hour of class, these are posted. And that allows all kids to access any lessons that have been taught during the class to make sure nobody falls behind. And I've had really good feedback. In fact, one of my students told me that she has a friend struggling in microeconomics at the UW, and she started sending her my videos. And the friend asked to continue to send them all year. So she asked me if it was okay if she did that. And I was like, oh, absolutely, feel free to send them. So these are really, really helpful to students, and I've had a lot of positive feedback. And then the last thing, again, that kind of just clarity and consistency for me as a teacher, when we're in breakout rooms, I love breakout rooms. I think they're such a great tool. They mimic when we're in small groups within the classroom, but they can be really overwhelming to, I think, both students and teachers, because it's letting them go into these rooms and can I monitor them and what are they doing and is everybody understanding directions? And so to really be clear for both students and myself what's happening in those rooms, I have all students work on a shared slide deck. So it's a Google slide deck that I just post within that weekly overview, as well as share it in the chat right before they go into a breakout room. And what this allows me to do is to see into every single room, whether I'm in there or not. So if I'm working with group 2, again, this was just from this last week, this was group 2's work, and they were actively putting their information in on this slide. And the first slide is always directions, so that students remember what they need to do. And then I can monitor all of the other groups while I'm working with a group. And sometimes, you get kids coming in late and I'm back in the main session and I want to make sure that everybody's on task and knows what's expected. So this really helps with that piece and it holds them accountable. And again, it allows me to really monitor and guide their understanding when they're in these breakout rooms. And then of course, we all come back and we share out. And they know the routine by now. And sometimes these are blank and we call them their sketch pads. And so I may not have a specific set of questions to answer, but they need to write their thinking throughout that breakout room. So all of these strategies kind of combined, really contribute to that clear, consistent, and compassionate situation that we're all in right now.
Bree, thanks for underscoring those things, and thanks for the metaphor, or the powerful metaphor at the beginning that threaded through. So appreciate you showcasing these strategies. So we asked Amanda Overly to join us here because she and her administrative team are doing some really, really creative and innovative things around building and sustaining a healthy school culture at a distance, and she's leveraging technology tools, specifically her Canvas page, to do that. So Amanda, you want to display what you'd like to share tonight?
Sure, thanks, Dr. Scott. Thank you everybody for having me. I'm excited to be here. So one of the things that I wanted to share before I got to the Canvas page and what we're doing with the Canvas page is we really started our campaign, so to speak, over the summer on social media to kind of hook our kids. And we were worried about hooking them in general, like knowing that they were coming back to distance learning. So I am going to attempt to share. We tweet a lot. We do a lot of funny stuff. We're very silly. Let's just put it that way. We are trying to bring the fun to a pandemic, right? We're trying to get the kids hooked on the school and get to know their administrators. One of the things that we found out, can you guys all see the little pictures that are displayed there? One of the things that we found is that our student body is much more on Instagram than they are on Twitter. So Dr. Salzman, I may be tweeting a little bit less, but I'm still Instagramming quite a bit. So several of the things we did over the summer were just playing, just being silly, letting them know who we are. Hopefully they can connect with us. We're taking some ideas from TikTok. Here's a very silly one. You'll see that they make absolutely zero sense. Can you hear this? So just little stuff that we're pushing out to students just to get their attention, right? We're trying to represent lots of cultures. We are trying to involve teachers. Here's another silly one.
Hey there, what's your name? Maybe want to be my buddy? I would love to be your buddy.
And a teacher.
Want to be mine? I would love to be your buddy. Want to get out of here, possibly go get a snow cone or something? Me? A snow cone? Well, duh! Wait a minute. You're not 6 feet apart away from me. No! You're...
So really focusing on trying to speak the students' language, and their language is definitely multimedia nowadays, right? They are looking for videos, they're looking for funny stuff, they're looking for bits. So we feel like the teachers are focusing really hard on teaching. Let's try to bring some fun into just the student body. So I will move to our Canvas page now. Are you guys able to see my Canvas page? Okay, so when a student logs in, they have an Everett student body course, just like they would have a chemistry course or an English course. Every school, I believe, has a student body Canvas page. So we've been trying to capitalize on this, making it visually exciting to the students. So here's our beautiful building on Colby we all know and love. And we've got our Bitmojis down there. If a student were to click on our graphic here, it would take us to our website. So, and then underneath here, we have some buttons that we have to make really visually nice for the kids, because we're finding that this is the kind of stuff they're used to clicking on. So this is what's going to attract them, and this is what's going to get them to go and read what we need them to read. So we have several buttons. If they click on the announcements button, they can go, it'll take them to our modules. And this is where we post our weekly admin video messages. We do them once or twice a week. And so if you miss one, it's okay. They usually watch them in 6th period, but if you miss it, it's okay. It's still on the module. You can still find it. If they click on the counselors button, it'll take them to the counselor's website, which will then allow them to request an appointment with their counselor to meet if they need to see their counselor using Calendly. If they click on the clubs and activities, it takes them to the clubs and activities module. We have all kinds of flyers for each one of the different clubs. We actually held a club fair for our students. So we had a big Zoom where all the club advisors were present with their officers, and students were able to just kind of bounce from Zoom to Zoom, figuring out, hey, where's my tribe? Where do I fit in to Everett High School? One of the things that's really cool is we operate, and we're still doing this, and we're actually looking at expanding it, is our Commons Room. So we have an we call it the Ehs Commons Room. Currently, we staff it from 7:45 to 11:45. It's not live now because obviously it's 6 o'clock. If a student needs help, they can click on the Commons Room and it takes them to a Zoom with a live person. And it's staffed by paraeducators and success coordinators, and we've got a whole suite of people that are helping. We help students with technology in there on a daily basis. We help students who are having a crisis. Oh my gosh, we're going to get a counselor for you right now. Just hang on, stay with us right here. That's probably been the best technological innovation thing that I've gotten great feedback on from parents, from students, and from teachers. Teachers are now sending students to the Commons Room to help with kind of low-level technology issues. Because one of the things that we've discovered in all of this learning together is that a great deal of teacher time is spent just helping kids learn how to open a file. Where did you save that file? Let's retrieve that file. So a lot of low-level technology that we can just help with right in the Commons Room. And then you can see it's election season at Everett High School. This was not done in the spring, but we're doing it now. So our kids are voting, and I think that's all I wanted to share with you. I did want to say about the announcements, the video messages are not just administrators, and I won't bore you with playing one of them, but we do incorporate ASB. They send us video clips. We put it into the announcements. Today's announcement had a class election video from our ASB officer, and then also an election a video honoring LGBTQ month, which is this month, October. So we're trying to incorporate as much student voice as they'll give us, but we're also very aware that they are struggling with content as with the amount of work at times, as our student representative mentioned earlier. So we're here. If they can give it to us, we'll put it out there. Really just trying to be exciting and get them to engage. The principal's challenge this month is to have them do a bad lip read of one of our announcements. Does anybody know what a bad lip read is? You guys, you must have seen him with like the NFL, like, you know what I'm talking about? So that's the principal's challenge. If they do a clean, fun, bad lip read of one of our announcements, they will get a prize delivered to their home. So lots of things going on, but that's just a few highlights of what we're doing at Everett High School to engage our kids at a distance.
Awesome, Amanda. Thank you so much for sharing. Great examples. I'm going to pause right here, President Mason. If last time we did a little pause here, so didn't know if you'd like to pause before we move forward in transition to the rest of our presentation.
Great. Yes, thank you. I just want to thank our three teachers and Principal Overly for joining us here on behalf of the board. I can't tell you the impact of seeing this stuff real time and better understanding it versus hearing about it on slides or in a presentation. And you all are just doing really incredible and innovative things. It's really interesting and really fun to see. I'm going to turn it over to any directors if you have questions regarding the presentation up until this point, or I'm guessing that the teachers or principal would answer any questions you might have as well. And I'm going to ask that you just speak up because I can't see everyone right now.
Oh yeah, this is Tracy. I just want to give praise to each of them for very specific things. Taylor, I really do like your classroom canvas. It's so nice to actually see canvas. So I really appreciate both you and Amanda showing some canvas images because those were outstanding. And Laura, I appreciate what the little thing about being invisible or transportation. I've always wanted to be multiple places at once, which I'm sure most of us would like to do. And then Bria, I really like the fact your videos in Zoom and out to Canvas. What an absolutely innovative thing to help students, and the fact that you're so fast with it. So I just really appreciate all of you being here. So thank you.
And I had a couple of things as well. I just want to echo Director Mitchell, just absolutely outstanding. And I, unfortunately, I was one of the parents at the beginning of the year where I couldn't really delve into Canvas like I wanted to. In fact, I'll own it. I haven't actually logged in to Canvas as a parent yet, so it's on my to-do list. But looking at your presentations today and also on the IRs, it's showing me what a powerful tool it is. And I guess my one piece of feedback would be, it would be amazing if we could get templates, right? Because the stuff you're doing, Taylor, there was a teacher that I saw earlier today, similar thing. I mean, it's just outstanding. And I feel like so many teachers probably just don't have the skills in Canvas to do it. And so if there was kind of a template, or even, a 15-minute teaching moment that you could do with your peers and things like that, it would make a huge difference, because I could look at your Canvas page and as a parent, really understand it and really understand what's going on. And kind of to that same thing about templates, I think as a district, we might want to take a note to maybe standardize things as we move through this process. Some of the things I think that I think are good, if not best practices in Canvas, are things like putting that Google assignment embedded into Canvas. Some teachers do it, some teachers don't. And so I think that makes a huge difference, because right now we're teaching and we're sharing things with families in different ways, right? Depending on their learning styles and how they get things, the synchronous versus asynchronous. And so I think it would be great to make certain things standardized. That said, I just kudos to Brian Beckley's team for all the tech work that you guys are doing. So we had to experience that as a family, and it was completely seamless getting help. In fact, I think it is easier than it was before. And that's kind of to Amanda's point about her Commons Room, and all of a sudden you got this access point that's way easier than we had it beforehand. I think it's the same with the technology piece of it. So maybe we can continue to do those things as a district. And then lastly, just to Bree, and that house analogy was so incredibly powerful. And I think because when we look at building and we look at houses, right, we have options, and we can just slap something up without a lot of care or concern, or we can be super intentional in what we do and building that foundation and keeping going up and making it unique, right, to everyone's taste. And that's what we've done, I think, and all of you have done just an outstanding job with your kiddos and with these new technology hurdles, and you've made them really opportunities to build the most amazing houses there are. So I can't thank you enough as a parent and as a director. And I feel like we're going to really come out of this possibly better than we went in, and serving kiddos better. So thank you so much.
Do any other directors would like to jump in?
I'd like to add to the innovation that all of you presented tonight. I really want to thank you for the hard work that you've taken to make sure that our kids are engaged and that you provide the fun in it. I look at the work that you've done as something that's unbelievable in such a short period of time. Thank you for your hard work and your effort. One thing I do truly like, Amanda, is the Commons Room. The Commons Room where kids can walk in and say, hey, I need problems in this particular area right off the bat. And you can attend to those and make sure the kids are getting the support they needed. And that's amazing. And Taylor, I do want to say I attended one of your classrooms and I thoroughly enjoyed it. During an IR. And innovation is amazing. We have done so much in such a short period of time, things that, probably would never have been heard of last year at this same particular time. And I'm sure that we can all appreciate the fact that, even though we're in this pandemic, our kids are learning something that they probably never would have learned if not for this pandemic. And how they've accomplished it and are able to accomplish it is because of the ingenuity and the innovation that we've provided and we've learned from. So that's a positive move. Not all bad things happen in a pandemic. There are some good things that come out of it, and working together is one of those things. Working together to overcome the problems that we have is the bright spot. And I'm so very thankful for what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Nichols or a student representative?
I was just going to say thank you all for being here and sharing your experiences with us. It always is really rewarding, actually, for me to see everything in play and not just live in this cosm of upper management, as it were. So thank you so much for being here and showing us all the great work you're doing.
Thank you. And student representative?
Yeah, so I just want to kind of echo what's been said, but especially from a student's perspective, for the teachers that shared what they're doing to help out students this year, I just want to say, at least among me, the people I talk to, those efforts aren't going unnoticed. A lot of my teachers and my friends' teachers have been doing similar things or different things that are very out of the box and creative to increase engagement this year, and that's something that we really appreciate as students, even if it doesn't seem like that on Zoom, or if we're tired or not participating, it means a lot to us. And especially, or not especially, kind of on the same level, but the administration at Everett High School, those efforts to think outside of what you're seeing on Facebook and Twitter, and try and look at what's going to be the most engaging on social media for students like us. It means a lot, and yeah, your efforts are very appreciated among students, even if it may not always seem like it in your virtual classrooms.
Thank you. I guess, Dr. Scott, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Taylor, Laura, Bree, and Amanda for being here this evening. We're gonna now transition to kind of the home stretch for the additional information. So Kathy, if you've, I think we are on slide 9. Yep. Perfect.
That's me, actually. So thanks, I really appreciate it. Boy, I feel like that was a really hard act to follow. Some amazing teaching happening in our schools. And I'd like to share a little bit about our hybrid status. So we've kind of given you kind of a general update of the steps that we've taken in notifying on hybrid status. And you recognize that Dr. Salzman at the top of the hour talked about November 16th as the date with some of our special education students returning to the in-person instruction, and stage 2 pushing out until January. One of the things I think that's really important as we're thinking about our hybrid planning is that we are constantly looking at what do we need to adjust? What do we need to adapt? We're constantly seeking information. There's a lot of ebb and flow on hybrid planning, but the number one thing that we're always watching is what is it that we need to do to keep the safety of our students and our staff at the forefront? And that's really driving a lot of the work that we're doing. You can see the outstanding teaching that we've been doing in remote. We know that in-person instruction is great, but we are truly blessed to have amazing teaching staff who are doing great things during remote. So the next slide here will show you our hybrid status. You'll see there's not a lot of dates in there right now because, as we've said, they're changing. But a big piece is that we've shared this with the community, and we need to recognize that we are carefully monitoring COVID cases. We've included this roadmap to our community, but we didn't have the dates in there because we want the elasticity to determine when we can return to hybrid to ensure the safety of our students and staff. And as you heard today, we'll be doing that in January. We're still utilizing this time to do really great planning and thinking about what we can do to help to make all of our students successful and safe. So the first phase that goes back on the next slide, you'll see we're going to enter stage 2 in November here. And that actually includes 4 separate groups of students with disabilities. Our developmental pre-kindergarten, developmental kindergarten, life skills and strive programs. And that's approximately 175 students in person with 75 in remote over the course, over 19 buildings. So what that really looks like is at the most, we have in between 10 and 14 students at the building. At the smallest numbers, I believe, are about 4 students at a building. But we know that many of our families of developmental pre-K, developmental kindergarten, students with disabilities, these are students with disabilities for whom accessing meaningful instruction virtually has been really difficult. So bringing these students back safely can help us to better serve their IEP goals and help them to achieve at higher rates. The next slide, you'll see a model of the hybrid status. So it's the AABB model with Wednesday as the kind of what we're calling the X day. This is the proposed model that we're looking at for return in January. And we really are thinking about the key factors that influence this model is health guidelines, what is the social distancing, what kind of PPE, as well as classroom capacity analysis. So really making sure that we have enough space for our staff and our students to return into those spaces so that we can deliver both live and asynchronous instruction, and really try to focus on continuing that classroom community preservation. So you'll see on Wednesday here, we have group A and group B doing a remote learning where there's some synchronous as well as asynchronous activities. we felt it was really important to ensure that our students had an opportunity to connect with the off-day cohort. We think that classroom community, you heard from some of the teachers tonight here about how critical that relationship building is and that creation of a community. And in a time where we feel so isolated as humans, we think that's a really critical component to making sure that we have that classroom community. So that's the hybrid status.
So many of you mentioned in your comments that you had the opportunity to attend the Let's Connect series, and this latest one on October 19th yielded some interesting themes, and we wanted just to, from a high level perspective, just review a bit of those themes. Some variables included in response to the prompt for parents, different reasons for their choice to either remain in 100% remote or to explore the hybrid return. Some of the variables included the accessibility of content for their student, some of the learning modalities currently in remote, and the extent to which kids were able to navigate with varying degrees of success, depending on their needs, depending on their grade level and so forth. The balance between synchronous and asynchronous instruction, how students were responding to directed independent learning was a variable. Just the overall consciousness of screen time is something we heard both in September and October. Some mentioned general health and safety related concerns as a factor in their decision making, related to social distancing, for example. And then questions about a day in the life, so to speak. So what does live instruction or interactions look like in classrooms, and how are students going to be navigating school? Many mentioned the desire to minimize transitions and keep their current teacher, irrespective of whether the teacher had expressed either a preference for remote teaching or hybrid teaching. And like we did last month, we wanted just to give again, a brief high-level update on the health and safety procedures that we continue to sharpen. And you may have seen the staff and family COVID safety handbooks that have been released. And you can see here just a sampling. This is probably a third of maybe even a quarter of the sections in the safety handbook. This is a sampling. We've talked previously about district-wide health and safety protocols, absolutely designed to comply with guidance from the public health agencies, including the State Department of Health, including the local health district. The handbooks have information on contingency planning, daily screening and health attestation processes, prior entering any district's facility. As you know, stakeholders are going to be met with signage and social distancing reminders, no touch thermometers, sign-in procedures, personal protective equipment related to the level of the proximity of the work that staff are going to be interacting with stakeholders. Both the proximity and then the core functions of the job are something that when we think about PPE, we think about what those core functions of the job are, how close and within what proximity are they going to be working with students. Classroom setup and use of materials, drop off and pickup procedures, HVAC, and training sequencing are just some of the many items in those safety handbooks.
So this is just a quick update on the meal service program. As you can see, we've had a phenomenal response to free meals for all. A lot of accolade about the quality of the meals as well. So the team is really proud of that. It's important to note that in our legislative circles, you'll hear districts that aren't able to have students or families fill out the free and reduced lunch application forms. Our systems and online processes, we haven't seen a drop in those rates. However, there may be a hold harmless ask for the legislature to use prior year rates. Nevertheless, we're not at that risk moving forward. And then finally, I'm sure the community is thinking, well, what happens next? What happens when we go back to school? Well, at least in stages 3 and 4 with our elementaries and hybrid, we will continue to provide meals to the community. It'll be different though. We'll have the curbside pickups in our secondary school, and our elementaries will really just focus on the room by room delivery of meals within those classrooms where the students are there. That doesn't preclude any of our community. So if you're an A day or a B day, you can still go over and pick up 5 meals worth of lunch. So in essence, under this program, our community actually gets 7 days of meals by being in hybrid in the school and then also picking up those at home. So looking forward, we'll understand to the extent we can do home deliveries, but we will adapt as we move forward.
And the last update on communications. So as you know, a big communication went out today to families about the hybrid being moved to January. And just so you know, we've committed that whenever we make any kind of change that will reflect scheduling, we always want to give families at least 2 weeks prior notice to changing that. So that's why yesterday we were able to let the special ed groups know a couple weeks ahead of time that their date has changed as well, because we know that there's planning that they need to consider and everything as well. As Dr. Scott mentioned, the Parent COVID Handbook is on the website. It's in English and Spanish and also in a translatable version there. So it's very similar to the staff handbook, but it has things that are a little bit more family focused. So things that you can do at home to help your child transition back into school, and health expectations for them as well. And then we're managing just an ongoing FAQ for whenever questions come up, people feed them to us and we find answers and get those posted on our website. So that is the most current place to find any answers is on the COVID 2020-21 web page. And then also, as you can tell, we've been managing a lot of surveys that we've been asking both staff and families what their choice is moving forward. And we actually, this last round, had a really good response rate for families. We had 70% response rate, which is a really high rate for a survey, but now we're going to go back and follow up on the other 30% that hasn't responded. So I think that not only in do you want hybrid or not, but in these Let's Connect sessions, and we're having some strategic plan questions to the community. We're pretty much every week or every other week, we have questions or input opportunities out there for our families and community to give us some input on what they think is a good direction for us to be moving in the future. And on that, we're ending with this cute little girl and want to know if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Kathy. And actually, thank you everyone who provided information on this. There are so many moving parts, and it's great to get these updates and really understand as things quickly change and progress, what continues to happen and what our planning looks like, both for us directors, but also for our public to understand these details. So thank you. Directors, are there any questions for really on any piece of the presentation?
This is Tracy. Yeah, I just have a question because I heard it from other board members, and then just because of the Snohomish County notice that came out, I think it was last week or the week before, but I appreciate, I'm sure families do, the 2-week notice about changes. But, and I'm sorry, I did not read the family communication yet, but is there also a big, huge but in there of if, anything changes within our county with guidance, this could change, just like the October to November, that just to be very clear with the families?
Yeah, we always put out what we expect are going to happen, and then we say, but these are all contingent upon COVID status and COVID rates, and they know that we can, even if we go back to hybrid, there's a chance that we might have to come back to fully remote, and that's clear in those messages.
Wonderful, thank you.
And I just had a couple of questions, and some of them might have been logistical. One is, do we have any word about the ACT, SAT? I got that question from a parent, like if we're going to be having those. Bueller.
Would you like me to respond to that, Dr. Salzberg?
Or anybody yet?
Yes, I would be honored if you to respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you. So the SAT, we have a contract for the spring, and provided that we're able to do that logistically and within the safety and health regulations, understanding that that's a lot of kids to test the whole junior class and have proctors for. So it is planned, provided that we can logistically do that within the health and safety regulations. We did recently hear from the College Board regarding the PSAT. They initially had said they were not going to offer a PSAT except face-to-face in October. And they have now offered a winter one on January 26th. So right now, we do have the capacity to do that, provided again that we can find the space and the proctors within the health and safety regulations. We will be providing it to a select group of juniors who met the higher than 90% percentile nationally, because that's the only path to the National Merit Scholarship.
Yeah.
It's a fairly small group of students in comparison to the whole class.
Yeah.
And so we'll find a way for sure to do it for them.
That's awesome. That's a huge deal. And that was my next question. Dr. Matthews, you always like have my questions answered before I ask. Thank you. The other question is with the surveys. I had a parent ask if they chose, 100% home or hybrid, like how are they stuck with their choices? And I wasn't quite sure how to answer that. They felt like based on the wordage that it was like you choose and that's it. But is there, and I know we want to minimize transitions, but what's kind of our language to the parents on that?
We right now are still following up with that 30% who didn't answer it. So we've had that question too. I didn't get it done. Okay. The schools will follow up with that. And we're trying to encourage people not to keep calling and switching their answers. But once we work through all the staff, preferences and what they want, the family can work with the school to figure out what their final answer is if it's different than what they originally had mentioned.
That's perfect. And mostly, I don't know how it is for the district, but I'm getting it from younger families, from families with younger kids, who it feels like they want to know, like, are the classmates coming? Is my exact teacher coming? Like so they kind of want that wiggle room to be agile based on what other people are doing. But I get that that's a huge, that would be a huge burden. The other question I think is for Jeff. The poverty rate, is that based on our free and reduced lunch? Like the folks filling that out when you said there was 38% poverty rate as of October 1st, like what's that based on?
Yes, and information that's provided to us from DSHS.
And is that, so where does that put us in like a normal year? Is that normal or is
it's actually within decimal points of last year?
Okay, so it's,
I think we would all think that it would be a bit higher. So it would be fully responsive, but it's higher than it was a few years ago and similar to last.
But in theory, we still probably have a large percentage of people just not filling it out because they're able to access, what they need to without having filled out that form. Is that kind of the thought?
It is the thought. We do have staff that do physical outreach. We began it in the summer knowing this was possible. And whenever we're trying just to confirm participation, we always ask. So it's been fairly successful, but I think we know in this environment, it probably is a bit higher over 40 as it was 4 or 5 years ago.
For sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you guys for all the work you're doing, because that was an incredible presentation.
So I had one quick question about the schedule for hybrid. Excuse me. Was there a specific reason that we went with 2 consecutive days of one group in the classroom, then the break, and then 2 consecutive days of the other group in the classroom, as opposed to alternating? Is there a health concern? Is there a scheduling concern? What's going on there?
I can answer that if you'd like. The reason that when we actually started doing our initial planning, we thought that having a day in between the 2 cohorts would actually provide us the opportunity to do deep cleaning. We have the capacity to be able to do that anyway, regardless. One of the things that we also recognize, though, is that there's that being able to transition and plan asynchronous lessons as well as the synchronous instruction can be quite taxing. So having a day where both kids groups of students could come together in the middle of the week helps to transition. And we worked with some of our teachers on helping to develop some of those pieces. The other pieces is that if in the AABB model, keeping those cohorted groups gives you a broader opportunity for some more frequency. So kids have a connection 2 full days in a row. We thought about kind of staggering it, but there was concerns around, could you, if you had the same cohort of student and to provide that vectoring or minimizing that contact tracing issue, if you could have the same cohort 2 days in a row, that it would reduce the cleaning in between changing students. So those were some of the reasons that we elected for that model.
Fantastic. I also like that you reached out to teachers as well to get their input on lesson planning for that. So that's great. Thank you. That was my only question.
You bet.
I have one comment. During one of the special ed meetings and the Let's Connect meetings that I attended, one of the concerns came up as to if we went to a hybrid situation and we were on an AAXBB schedule, the concerns was that during the BB schedules, when the kid was doing remote learning, they essentially would not have any interconnection or interactions with a teacher. And that was very worrisome to some parents, that they would only see a teacher for 3 days, maybe 3 days out of the entire week. And then when they went to the BB schedule, be it before, at the beginning of the week or after the week, at the end of the week, they would not have any interactions with a teacher. And that did prove worrisome. I wonder, have we thought or rethought about that?
Yeah, actually, one of the things, because we understand that concern around the remote model provides 5 days of both synchronous and asynchronous activities, but nothing in person. And the hybrid model provides 2 full days of in-person instruction and 3 days of synchronous. And Wednesday would have a small amount of synchronous connection with the teacher. So it is a challenge because we've had parents with that same question who said, wow, I can get 5 days of remote instruction where I'm having synchronous activity with my teacher every day. How is that better or worse than 2 days of in-person? And what we know is that we have some of our students in our system that while remote is working for them and we're able to serve them, in-person instruction is really ideal. And so we have some families who say, I would rather take 2 full days of in-person instruction because that's how my student will optimize their learning, and do the asynchronous and the checkpoints for the rest of the week rather than the remote learning that we're experiencing now. So it is a challenge for families to choose. However, that is an option that we wanted to provide for them. They could remain in a fully remote because that may serve them better and serve their families better. And they may choose 2 days of in-person, because we've had families who said, I'll take 2 days in person because it serves my students' needs better. My student needs the personal in-person connection. In-person instruction is how they will be best served. So they're willing to do those pieces. So yeah, we did consider those.
Okay, student representative, do you have any questions for anyone? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. So I'm going to go ahead and thank everyone. I think the questions, the director questions in particular, highlight the complexities of moving to a hybrid model, and certainly matching family desires with scheduling and what their needs are in terms of childcare is there's just a whole lot of complexity to it. So it's just nice to know that we're planning now, that we're working on this. We're asking parents early so that we can get to that point when hopefully the cases do drop and we can start to bring students back. So thank you for all of you, to all of you for working through all these details. Okay, with that, I think we're going to go ahead and move on to through our agenda here, and we move to unfinished business. And tonight there is no unfinished business, which takes us to 14.0 new business of the agenda. And we have 3 policies to review tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Fleckenstein.
Well, thank you. And tonight we have 3 new policies for the board's consideration. The first is policy 2170, career and technical education. This policy meets the federal requirements for the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Act of 2006, as amended by the Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, or the Perkins 5 Act. A central component of the policy is that it directs the creation of a CTE advisory and a plan in consultation with district staff, eligible recipients, parents, students, higher ed institutions, and a diversity of community members and business partners. And the last time the board had received an update on their annual plan was in their April 28, 2020 board meeting. This particular policy, 2170, career and technical education, has been reviewed by executive cabinet and legal counsel prior to tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Directors, are there any questions on policy 2170?
I just have a quick question. So do we have a board? Like, does this create an entity, or do we already have one? I guess I'm just not familiar with it.
We do have already strong partnerships, as with our some of our partnerships and career pathways that we've developed for different bond packages, right? In relationship to the curriculum development we have here, we do have an advisory board. This is just formalizing what our requirement is within the policy itself. We don't have this policy in place, and we are to do so if we are receiving federal funds. So this is really just reinforcing in board policy the practice that we're doing to comply with federal law.
Okay, so we do have a CTE advisory committees around each of those. Okay, so I guess I didn't know that. So I learn something new every day. So is that's listed on the site, like who they are, who's on those committees, and all that stuff when they meet?
I don't know. I'm sorry, Director Berg, I don't have the answer if they are listed on our website at the moment.
They
okay,
I'll jump in because I went and looked myself, and they are.
Oh, good. Thank you. They are listed. Okay, great.
I was curious of the same question, so I just went to
our okay, awesome. So I will do some more digging on that, but that's great to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move this policy to second reading.
Our second new policy this evening is 3235, protection of student personal information. Although we already have several policies as referenced here in the cross-reference section, including 2105 for educational research, 3600 student records, 4340 public access to district records, and 6230 relations with vendors. This particular new policy is to be compliant with federal requirements, that we develop a policy that includes a parent's right to consent before students are required to submit to a protected information survey if the survey is funded in whole or in part by federal funds. In addition to that, this policy also designates that parents receive notice and an opportunity to opt out of their student out of any other protected information survey, regardless of the funding source for that survey. Certain physical exams and activities involving the collection, disclosure, or use of personal information collected from students for marketing or to sell or otherwise distribute the information to others. And that includes third-party generated surveys. So as you can see in the policy language here in the second paragraph, it says, to this end, the district will ensure that all negotiated contracts and online terms of use agreements with school service providers align with the Student User Privacy and Education Rights Act. And that's just as creating this option for parents to receive notice and being able to opt out if their students' personal information is going to be collected in a survey administered through district means. So policy 3235, protection of student personal information, has been reviewed by legal counsel and the students and the superintendent's executive cabinet prior to tonight's event, sorry.
Thank you. I was happy to read this policy and see it in place just because this is, of course, a topic of great concern in our world today, and to see that there are measures that we can take and that have also been taken at the legislative level to ensure that we are being very careful about our student information. Directors, are there any questions?
Just briefly, I'm wondering why, if this is about partially about giving parents the ability to opt out, why is that not mentioned in this policy? Or is it mentioned somewhere else that I'm not seeing?
Yeah, there'll be a related procedure developed by the superintendent's cabinet that will go into a Friday report for director's information. That would have that piece to it. As you may be aware, we do create opt-outs for students in many different surveys that we have. For one example would be policy 2105, educational research. We allow students to opt out of an approved research activity if they don't want to participate.
All right, thanks.
Okay, hearing no other questions, we'll go ahead and move it to second reading. And I just want to pause for a moment because I should have, after our fall reopening status update, mentioned that our teachers and principal who have been with us for the evening are welcome to please go enjoy the evening and be with your families unless you choose to stay and go through more policies. Go ahead, Mr. Fleckenstein.
Yes, and thank you. And completing the trio of tonight's new policies is 3515, student incentives. The district staff recommend adoption of this new policy to align with our current practice. In 2011, the state auditor issued guidance that allows districts to provide de minimis student incentives for recognizing student academic achievement, but requires that the district have a policy in place before doing so. The district, however, already provides these types of incentives, but does not currently have an adopted policy. While we are compliant with the guidelines, it is important that we make sure that we set policy around that. So this policy pertains only to district funds, not ASB funds, just to make that distinction. You can see that there's a cross-reference here to associated student bodies as well.
Thank you. Any questions on policy 3515? Hearing none, we will also go ahead and move this to second reading and thank Mr. Fleckenstein for the information and overview tonight.
Thank you.
That takes us to section 15.0 of our agenda, which is upcoming agenda items. And I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Salzman.
Ian, you're on mute.
Okay, muted. Sorry about that. Okay, at our November 5th special meeting, the board will discuss the new parent and community engagement plan. And it's going to be exciting when we roll that out to everybody to see that. So it's awesome. And then our regular meeting on November 10th, 2020, we'll discuss the following. First, recognitions of our National Merit Scholar finalists, special education program review, comprehensive sex health education curriculum, ASB Constitution revisions, census donation, and several policies for second reading. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's see, we are at 16.0, which is executive or closed session. And tonight we do not have an executive or closed session. So we move to 17.0, which is adjournment. I would like to close this meeting of Everett Public Schools Board of Directors on October 27th and say thank you to everyone and happy Halloween. If I don't see you before the end of the week, I hope you all have a fun and entertaining weekend and have an opportunity to take a little break and have some family fun together. So thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
And happy birthday, Caroline, and happy birthday, Taylor.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.